What's up, everybody? Drew Cappuccino Casaccio here, talking to Mark Carter, Idea Climbing. Mark, how you been?
Awesome. Good to be back in the studio. Looking forward to the guests getting here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And today I think we're talking a little bit about mentoring, right? Mentoring experience to fuel your big idea.
Yep, that will be it.
And you know, no stranger. I'm sure you've mentored a few, and you probably had a few mentors. Can you give us a quick synopsis on what you consider a mentor and who your mentor was?
I consider a mentor somebody that gives you advice, support, and or connections to solve a problem. And mentors range from people you wouldn't recognize. When I started speaking to high schools, I was cold calling in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Cold faxing. Let me replace that because let me date myself a little bit here. And I was putting a price tag of $150 on the speech. And I still remember him looking at me. It was just like his jaw dropped. He said, "You know why no one's calling you back? They're not going to take you seriously unless you spend unless you offer for $1,500, which should be your base rate." So a lot of things like that when I was getting started that I would have taken me months, if not longer, to figure out on my own. And then my first mentor back when Yahoo was the Google of the day, well, my first serious mentor, it was the chief solutions officer of Yahoo. He came over with Mark Cuban, helped me out a lot. And one thing I always tell people with mentoring, if you can collaborate with your mentors and work with them, it's better than just getting advice. Advice is great, don't get me wrong. But when I worked with him on his third book launch and ran social media for him, it got real because I was getting my hands dirty. I was learning things in real time. So I've been blessed over the years to always have some great mentors.
Well, that's awesome. And speaking of mentors, I believe your guest is here. You want to go? I'll go ahead and bring him in so you can introduce him.
Sounds good. Hello, Hassan.
Hello.
I thought I was gonna have to do the virtual meeting. You're on mute.
Yeah, right. I'm just making sure my my cam is hooked up here. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome. How about you? How's your day been?
It's been a lot of meetings, man. Too many meetings for me at this age. You know what I mean?
And I want to introduce you first, so people know a little bit of your background, and we'll dive right into. We've had a lot of mentoring conversations. This is going to be awesome. Hassan Akmal is an American career and life mastery consultant, author, professor, thought leader, philanthropist, and former professional tennis player and athlete ambassador to the United States. He's best known for his Amazon best-selling book, How to Be a Career Mastermind. Discover 7 You Matter lenses for a life of purpose, impact, and meaningful work. Akmal is a senior leader in career services for over 15 years and has been in higher education for nearly 30 years. Akmal became the inaugural executive director of the industry relations and career strategies space at Columbia University in 2017 and co-founded the award-winning career design lab for Columbia University. In April 2019, he delivered a keynote address on the future of career services at the Global Leaders Summit. Then in December of 2019, Akmal was selected as a speaker for Columbia University's TEDx event. And this was really cool. I love seeing this happen, especially to someone like you. His TEDx talk was released in May 2021 and has already received over 1.5 million views. And I'm done with the introduction.
No, thank you so much for that warm introduction. It's good to see you after a couple of years, right? It's been a couple of years since I've seen you. And you're up to doing great things, and congratulations on your book. I was able to get myself a copy and wrote a nice review after I got through it. So it's just very nice to see you doing great things.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the review. That's always a good thing, as you know, as an author.
Absolutely.
And I'd love to jump right in. We're going to be talking about mentoring and how it can fuel your big idea for the people watching and listening. Why? Let's start with, why is mentoring important to you? What's the story behind why? Because I know it's so important to you. Why is that?
Well, I think, I'll start with the world is changing, right? It's changing at a rate that's hard to keep up with and also hard to get ahead of. And I think that mentorship in general is evolving in itself beyond sort of the traditional one-on-one model as well. It's becoming a lot more diverse, inclusive. There's different forms of mentorship now. And then mentorship in the digital age means means something different altogether. It's really transforming kind of how mentorship is happening, and in terms of like virtual mentorship or through video calls and chat platforms and different online tools. And we're all lifelong learners, right? So if you really take that seriously, sort of in the spirit of continuous improvement, you'll learn real quickly that you need mentorship and you need a multi-mentor model. I call it a personal board of directors, and those mentors change over time, but they are absolutely imperative and integral to your growth and from getting you from point A to point B, which is that goal or that career and life vision that you have.
So in your life, what's an example of a story of when you had a great mentoring experience? It could just be one, or a relationship as a whole.
Yeah, so I started my career. So I've been, higher ed 29 years, 15 years as a director of career services, half as an executive director. So I was hired as a director. And when I was hired, the president of the university was actually interviewing me for a different job. And I was a professor of global health, critical thinking. And he just kind of looked at my background and said, hey, I want to throw a position out for you. And if you give me a good answer to the question I'm going to ask you, I'm going to hire you. And he had that eye. He was a former recruiter. He had that kind of, eye for talent. And I was just starting my career. And, he asked me to give him an inspirational story of how I would motivate a student to get up out of bed and interview for a job. One who had not had a lot of luck, who was an international student and who was debating on whether or not they should even go interview. Like, why bother? I've interviewed 100 times and I haven't gotten it. So should I even waste my time and pay for parking? And I gave him the story of my mom after my father passed away, literally working in the swamp meet with us, on weekends, 4:00 in the morning and selling backpacks and things like that Saturday and Sunday just to make ends meet. And my mom eventually interviewing for a job that a neighbor walked over and presented to her to our front door while it was hailing on the last day for a position as a chemist. And she somehow, sure enough, the neighbor convinced my mom, who, still learning English at the time, right? Not my native language or my mother's, first generation US. So she interviewed for the job, drove an hour to Visalia from Fresno, interviewed for the job, got the job, and that was her job for the next 30 years. And, when I gave that answer, he said, wow. And he hired me as the director of career services, but I had never been a director of career services before. So I knew immediately that the first thing I needed to do is to talk to all the trailblazers and all of the top career services directors so I could pick their brain, and start from that place of emptiness, because that place of emptiness and openness is really where learning takes place. And I learned that from the founder of TED, right? It's not about education, it's about learning. And that's where it takes place when you kind of humble yourself and open yourself up. And so that's what I did. And I started building my mentor circle.
Well, when you mentioned being humble and opening yourself up, especially being new to an arena in business, I think people of any age could relate to this, whether it's an entrepreneur or someone in career change or about to make one. How did you approach those people to get their attention to mentor you?
I had a lot of success as a financial advisor, as a pro tennis player, and a lot of different other areas that, put me in the spotlight, whether it was in media or other areas. And so they saw me as somebody that could bring value to the conversation as well. And we see a lot of students struggle with this, where they feel like it's a one-sided coin, where they really don't have anything to offer to the mentor, but we know that it's far from the truth. And so almost from a kind of reverse mentorship perspective, and this is obviously I would say a sort of a rising trend as well, where, even somebody who's young or less experienced could mentor somebody who's much more experienced, as a counterpart. And it's that exchange of knowledge and perspectives that happens, and that promotes that culture of continuous learning. And so I felt like the conversations that I had with these thought leaders in career services some who had been in career services for 20 years were benefiting both of us, even though I felt like it was benefiting me much more because I was picking their brains about how they do things. But those conversations, for some reason, something I said in them, they thought, hey, this guy has some really good ideas. And, I had a lot of ideas.
Yeah, you do.
I have a lot of ideas. Before I knew it, I was put on a committee. It was a national career services committee called, under a project name called Project Hawaii. And essentially, that project was, if you were to build the ideal career center, what would it look like? And there was no career center, location in Hawaii at the time, but they were, like, what's going to look like? How much staff? What's the programming? We're going to give you a size of population, let's say 30,000 students. What's it going to look like? And I was on this team with all these top directors, and I found myself really enjoying it and contributing. And they saw that, hey, this guy has a passion for career services, even though I didn't, I can't say I was born with it, but I love motivating people and I love motivating teams, and I was learning a lot, and I enjoyed that learning process. And sometimes we have to learn how to learn. So I was learning how to learn in a new field, in a new industry, even though I had a lot of transferable skills. And by the end of that, I had built alongside that team what we thought was, the ideal career center. And although that career center, it's no, cookie cutting, and you can't put it, you can't take it and drop it at UC San Diego or something like that. It just taught us so much about how to approach that career services model. So I think that was very valuable early on, and something that I didn't expect in terms of, how that conversation would go. And I think it had a lot to do with that sort of reverse mentorship concept.
Well, tell me if I'm on point. One of the big things I just took away from you, as far as engaging with mentors, making it meaningful, is that they saw the passion in you, which means you were sharing passion. And tell me if I'm on point, that if you're passionate, people are more likely to help you out because they're sensing the passion, not just, oh God, how do I do my job? I mean, would that be right?
100%. I'll tell you another story. So when I was a student at UC San Diego, I took a leave of absence to turn pro because tennis was my first passion. And I paired up with a Portuguese coach who I was, trying to convince him to be my full-time pro coach. And when he ended up agreeing, after turning down hundreds of other players, he told me, the reason I selected you was you had the tiger in your eye. I still remember this. I was 19, right? So that passion, I think, speaks to you. And even to today, when people ask me for private tennis lessons, I only coach people who are really serious, not somebody that's being forced to go to a tennis club, where someone's real spoiled, their parents are just forcing them and they don't want to be there. Someone that actually is real serious, or an upcoming junior or pro, because of that passion. But I think passion by itself is not enough, right? Because if you have passion, you can be passionate about so many different things, but you have to be good at them, right? You have to, sometimes you realize you're passionate about it after you're doing it, right? So I didn't know I was going to be passionate about career services. In fact, I was overwhelmed because I was told that, this is a true story. My first week, I had this amazing person on my team, and she came over to me and she said, I know you just started, Hassan, it's your first day, but I'm going to resign. And I was like, why are you going to resign? And they said, I heard that if I have 85% employed, I may not have a job anymore. And that pressure was too much for me. And so, I said, wow. And, and I, obviously lost this amazing person, but it motivated me to get good at it real quick, because I didn't want to feel that pressure either, and to stay ahead of the curve. And that conversation that I had led to me building a team where we were so forward thinking and building forward momentum that we never had to deal with that pressure, because we were always top ranked. So I've been, fortunate enough to be in the top, 10 or 15 in different categories as a career services leader, my career center being ranked, whether it's Princeton Review or whatever it is, throughout my entire career, 15 years in a row, which is something I'm real proud of. But it was because of those conversations and me trying to get good at my passion, because I realized I liked the idea of coaching students and the fulfillment that came along with it, because I felt like as much as I'm giving them, they're giving me back that fulfillment, the same fulfillment I felt when I used to run an NGO and work with refugees and things like that, right? If you can motivate a refugee to not give up, whose crops are destroyed in Afghanistan, and teach them how to make rice and potatoes, and that's fulfilling for you, then probably you're going to be able to motivate a student and see that same satisfaction when they land meaningful work. And so I think that passion was transformed into a skill, which was used to solve the problems of other people, which at that point, these students are looking to align meaningful work and to find a job, which will hopefully translate to a career.
Well, you've touched on a few examples, but I'd like to really clarify. You had mentioned that there's different forms of mentorship, and a lot of people think it's the young kid at the bottom of the hill looking up and the gray-haired guru with all of his life answers, and it's not it. And that's definitely not the only form of it. Can you explain a couple forms of mentoring that you've experienced so people can realize, wow, I have more than one option?
Yeah, so similar to like when we've had some chats, I think in New York City about mentorship and how mentorship isn't a it's we take mentorship very seriously. Let's put it that way, right? So there's a difference between you having a coffee chat with somebody who might be a point of reference for you, or a sponsor, right? Let's say somebody is going to sponsor you or vouch for you for a position you're going for, and it's kind of like a one-stop mentor moment where you convince them to put in a good word for you. I take mentorship kind of to a whole different level in terms of defining it and the evolution of it and kind of where it's headed. So when I talk about mentorship, I do believe like we've talked about, like the essence of it really is collaboration and there's a plan, right? And so we're building this mentorship program at UC San Diego. I just put together this game plan, right? Because you had to have structure, and you have to have mentorship is also very time consuming. It's a full-time job to run it, but you got to have that structure, and you have to build it upon something. So there's different forms, right? So you have the one-on-one mentoring. If you take that, for example, all the layers in terms of that, like you have, maybe you're going to go over the resume, maybe you're going to talk about your vision, your career and life vision with a mentor. There could be a good mentor if they are available and they have something to offer, but sometimes those mentor relationships aren't working, and you have to quote unquote break up with a mentor. And so there's an expiration date with some of those. There's also, we have the National Association of Colleges and Employers competencies. We also have 12 UC San Diego competencies, which is built upon those NACE competencies. You can embed that in those conversations with mentors and that one-on-one mentoring. You can have the students, for example, take a career readiness assessment, get the results back literally right after they finish, and have a discussion about that perception gap, where they see themselves and what the results are and what might employers see in terms of what they're looking for. So you have the one-on-one mentoring. Then you also have what I call mentor circles. And those circles are, similar to when you're thinking about a career circle or a career opportunity circle, I like to say, right? You don't just think about job titles. You think about skills as the new currency. So you focus on the skills, because when you focus on skills, it expands that career circle, right? So if I'm thinking about becoming a anthropologist, I'm thinking about job titles. But if I take away the job title and I focus on the skills, I like to dig, I like to explore, right? I'm focusing on the skills. All of a sudden, that career circle is expanded, and maybe I'm thinking about being an HR recruiter because I can dive and dig through resumes and things like that. So same thing with kind of the career circle expanding and kind of the evolution of skills being the new currency as you move into the future of work. So is mentorship changing, right? So you have these multi-mentor models. You're building a personal board of directors. You have people in different industries, in different companies, not even in the same company that you're at or in the same position you have, but people that can give you sound advice and tips on how to navigate different things from different perspectives. You also have cross-generational mentorship, right? So mentorship is kind of being bridged, right, with generational gaps, right? You have older folks mentoring younger ones, but you also have that, they're given the wisdom and experience, but you have younger generations talking about the insights of the latest trends and technologies and platforms that they're using. So it goes both ways, right? spoke about the diversity mentorship, but you also have, mentorship for entrepreneurship or skill development, or even let's take the future of work and how remote work is here to stay. Mentorship from remote work, right? How you can help individuals navigate the challenges of remote collaboration and time management. So you have all these different layers of mentorship. You have points of reference, you have sponsors, you have one-on-one mentors, you have an enabler, somebody that opens a door for you, right? Maybe they do an introduction for you. And then you also have a board of directors. And the folks in your mentor circles, some of them will end up becoming that personal board of directors, but not all of them, right? And you make those decisions over time based on the value that's being shared.
Well, you've mentioned something a few times that I agree wholeheartedly with, is that you can't just have one mentor and have it be the end all be all. I know I've had multiple ones for different arenas, but could you speak to why is it important to have multiple mentors and not just one?
Yeah, so right now I probably have about 10 to 12 formal mentors. And then I have a number of points of reference, enablers, sponsors, who are all in different industries and areas, from a president of university to somebody who sells almonds in the street, right? Who talks to me about, the spiritual journey, the inner journey of career and life, which I think speaks to me in terms of career and life design and the future of career services. So in different layers, different ways. If you have one mentor, you're putting all your eggs in one basket, and they may offer you advice, but it's going to be limited, right? It's not going to be necessarily with the ability to answer every single question you have. So if you were to get 3 perspectives on the same question, like let's say I were to take the future of career services, right? And I were to ask the top career services directors. I recently wrote an article for NACE on the future of career services. And they asked me what I wanted to call it. And I said, I want to call it designing the future of career services. Mm-hmm. The reason why is because we are designing the future of career service. So one thought leader may say, and this is me speaking. I'm saying, no, there's the future of career services. We are designing it, and here's why. The thought leader may say, Hassan, future of career services is data. The third may say, it's AI. You're going to have AI as an extension of your team. All good answers, but 3 different perspectives. And if I were to combine all those and look at it holistically, a panoramic view, I might get a better perception and understanding of what it might be. So you're diversifying all those perspectives, and we know from data that diversity of perspective lends itself to success and excellence in the workplace. So I think it's the same application in terms of your growth. You're getting a lot of diverse perspective. Now, I'm not saying to have 100 mentors, but it's all about the quality versus quantity. And one thing, for those that know me, I talk a lot about quality. It comes, I start with the why, I focus on the quality over quantity. And that's one thing that I'm proud of, is it's not just about getting students jobs, it's about them being satisfied with their first destination. And when I get, a large percentage of students saying, I landed, my primary objective, or I'm happily employed, that means a lot to me. So I look at the quality of those conversations, collaborations in terms of mentorship in that mentorship arena. And then that's how I'm able to say, okay, I need another mentor, or, I'm working a lot with AI. My brother's at Apple and AI. I'm learning a lot about AI and speaking on a lot of future of work forums and things like that. So I'm learning a lot about AI, and I've integrated into my own life. I integrated into my last book, right? I wrote a children's career book, and all the images I created through AI. So I might be like, well, I'm missing a piece here. I need to have somebody that's an AI integrator or a prompt engineer that can teach me how to master the prompt, in their world, but it could be applied to career services.
Well, we talked about different kinds of mentoring and quality. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's got to be a quality relationship. And what we've been talking about so far is planting seeds and where to plant the seeds. When it comes to growing mentoring relationships beyond just that one-time session or maybe just 2 quick sessions, how do you successfully grow a quality mentoring relationship beyond just one or two interactions?
So that's a great question. And I think a lot of different answers for that. But I would say, it starts with I think with career development in general, it's really about alignment with who you truly are. And that's an inner journey, like I mentioned. And you want to bring that true self to that conversation, and you want to be very genuine. If you're really nice and considerate and appreciative of somebody's time, they're much more likely to keep that conversation going over the long run. And what I see sometimes is students or people being just too aggressive. Like I've felt like a doormat before. People come in, just ask me questions and walk out the door, and they don't even ask me how I'm doing. Right. So I think you want to be really genuine. You want to be, it sounds like, very basic, but I'm telling you, it matters. Number one, right? So being genuine, being who you truly are, and just being grateful for the time that that person is giving you out of their day. Two, I would say, and this is coming from personal experience, I check in with my mentors. I wouldn't say frequently, right? Because some of these mentor relationships have evolved over 10 years or a decade. Some of them have evolved into friendships.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them have not evolved into a friendship, but I always make it a point to check in with them when they're making a transition or when I'm making a transition. So let's say, and it's not just if I'm applying for a new job, I'm asking them to be a reference. No, just a transition. So kind of give them an update on what's happening. I think there's a role for mentorship in career transitions, and in career transitions is something that everyone's talking about because everyone's pivoting in some way. It's very interesting, and people are learning from that. So the vital role that mentorship plays in career transitions in terms of helping someone individually transition between careers or industries or even geographic locations, right? The guidance of mentorship can be a very powerful asset in these transitions. So I'd say, build them around those transitions in conversations, and also build them around skills that you're trying to acquire. So if you're looking to build a new soft skill and something like that, that might be a good opportunity for you to reach out to somebody and ask them, hey, can I pick your brain about emotional intelligence? Adaptability is on every job description now. Communication or technical skills, or what's your definition of leadership, right? There's the definition of leadership seems outdated. What's your definition of leadership? And I'll give you one real life example real quickly. So I asked them on that question the other day. I put it in the article that I wrote for NACE, which is coming out in a couple of weeks. I asked them, I called up a change consultant, change management consultant, organizational behavior expert, right? And professor as well. And I said, hey, teach me about leadership, because he has a TED talk about leadership. And he said, I want you to watch the speech by Colin Powell. And I said, okay. And he gave me the speech. And Colin Powell says that a good leader is when people follow you, even if it's just out of curiosity. And I was like, wow, I've never heard that definition before. So boom, I just learned something, because I was thinking about my next step in terms of, an assistant vice chancellor, associate vice chancellor, associate vice provost, a position at that level after 15 years as a director, right? Executive director. And I knew that I needed a strong definition of leadership, and to gravitate and to learn and to become a better leader. And he gave me a definition that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
Well, let's flip the coin now. As far as fostering successful mentoring relationships, especially if someone, and this could be any age, not just undergrad, not just new startups, but any age, if they haven't had a lot of mentoring experience, they might not know how to do the things that you just mentioned. What can somebody do as a mentor to grow and foster a relationship and help it along if the other person is a novice at mentoring?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say one thing I think that many people don't do is they don't talk about a career and life vision, right? So I think if you just jump into that mentorship conversation is kind of like career development coaching has evolved as well, right? So back in the day, somebody walks into your office and you ask them, hey, what's your passion? They're like, oh, I don't know. Like, oh, okay, we'll spend some time thinking about it and come back when you figure that out, right? That was old career services. Very passive, I remember when
take a test and it tells you should be a garbage man or you should be a CEO because I answered 25 freaking questions in my day. It was a Scantron with pencil. It's like, how do you decide my life based on 25 questions?
Some universities are still using Scantrons. I'm telling you, I've seen them. But anyway, but yeah, not to date myself, but when I went to the Graduate Career Center, I won't name which university, they pointed to a computer and they said, and they had a stack of resumes, all the same, by the way. Didn't matter if you were accounting, finance, public health, you name it, all the same. Objective at the top, right? No core competency section. And they said, good luck. And I could just look on the computer for jobs and apply, but there was no coaching. So career services changed. So just like mentorship relationships have changed too, if a student walks into my office and says they need resume help, and I don't take the time to find out who they are, how they're doing, right? Imagine you're catching somebody on a really bad day and you're going to ask them questions about, their career, and they're just not dialed in at the moment, right? That it may not be the best time, but that could lead to like a really eye-opening direction and conversation that could lead them, because maybe they're just fed up and maybe they hate accounting. Maybe their parents or someone of their parents is accountant and they really want to be an investment banker or whatever it is, or an entrepreneur. I hear a lot these days, right? You'd be surprised at how many students really want to be entrepreneurs, but are afraid because of limiting beliefs or things like that. So I don't want to just dive into that resume. I want to talk to the student and find out, what does this mean on your resume? Who are you? Why are you doing this? Go 7 levels deep on their why. Ask them about purpose. And, you could take a lifetime figuring out what purpose is, but I want to have that conversation with them. Because if I don't, and their goal is to get here, but they're here, right? But they're doing this. This is going to get them there. So if their goal is to be here, let's say they want to live in a house in Portugal and work remotely and have a certain lifestyle. Okay, if they're on the track for this job, which is not going to be able to afford that nor work from home, then something's going to change, right? And I think what happens is you have people that will graduate, that will realize after the fact, and we know already from data that most students will graduate in a career that's not degree related, and they'll change and they will evolve. But if you have conversations about career and life vision early on, and I'm talking about not just a vision statement, that's important, and it's in our programming here at UC San Diego, but I'm talking about clarity, right? Focus, you're going to focus, right? And then you're going to have more clarity. And sometimes you have clarity before you focus, because if you have clarity on the big picture, then you can focus in on where you need to work and all those steps to get there. So I would say like having that sort of broad-based conversation first before you're looking at the resume and cover letter and job titles and all that is absolutely critical. I think that's a misstep also that most mentors have in terms of helping their mentees. 2, time, right? You got to make time for that mentee. Most mentors I know, it's just rushed. It's rushed. The quality just goes out the door, and they're making an introduction real quickly and that's it. But it's really not really thought out and things like that. So I think I would really take the time at looking at it from a holistic perspective. Looking at their soft skills and hard skills and goals, and just really putting in some time and looking at it with a panoramic view, a holistic view, because just like career coaching needs to be tailored and customized for each individual, so does mentoring.
Well, one big thing I'm taking away from what you just mentioned, including the Colin Powell speech, is that a reason for finding a mentor can make you as the mentee a better leader. But you gave a few examples in there where helping somebody grow, listening to them, getting them straight, getting them on a path. It sounds, would I be on point by saying, if you're a mentor, you're honing your leadership skills, which can change your life?
100%. Like, Phil Collins has this quote. It's like, in learning, you will teach, and in teaching, you will learn, right? And I always remember that one. And I think that that, just like when you give charity to a street child, their smile is charity back at you.
Mhm.
And the fulfillment that we get, the motivation, the inspiration, the energy, right? How it affects you, your magnetic field, all the, the new physics of it all, right? is priceless. And the testimonials and just, and I think like if you look at my door, it's full of thank you cards from students, and I keep them over the years because it's just, it's a part of me now. Right. So my entire door is filled with them and
Sentimental trophies.
Yeah. So here, I'll show you. This is my office door. Take a look. You can see all the cards bottom to top.
You've done a lot of freaking good.
Yeah, well, I think people are grateful, right? And when people are grateful to you, you want to give them more. But all those were gifts to me, right? As I learned something from every single student, and many of them keep in touch with me to this day. So I think that is very much, reflective of the gifts that go both ways. And I remember Steven Spielberg said something too that was really interesting. He said, the delicate balance of mentoring someone is not creating them in your own image, but giving them the opportunity to create themselves. So I feel like I empowered them to design the rest of their life.
Well, considering how much we've covered a lot of ground in a relatively short period of time. And I usually end with one, but let's do two. If someone is a mentee or a potential mentee is thinking, okay, there was a lot in here, there's a lot of meat. If you're going to tell them, just to get started, do one thing, just to get the ball rolling, do one thing, what would you tell them to do?
I would start with learning more about themselves, right? So Ralph Waldo Emerson said, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. And so I would teach them that the journey is a spiritual one, it's inward. So I would ask them, before you interview anybody else and start setting up informational interviews, I want you to interview yourself. And I want you to look at your core values. I want you to go 7 levels deep on your why. And I want you to start the conversation of purpose. I might share the Ikigai framework, where it's like what you're passionate about, what you love, what the world needs, what you can get paid for as a framework. But if they're not there yet, I would even start with interests versus passions, because there's a lot of confusion there. So if they have interests, sometimes they do those interests in their free time, but sometimes they don't know how to distinguish them from passions. So I would tell them, interests are things that you do in your free time. Passions are things that you make time for. So I'd have them kind of start from interests to passions, to do some of that inner reflection, right? Distinguish them, identify their passions, then focus on which ones they can get good at. Mm-hmm. And I would focus on mastery, right? Mastery of that passion, and then figuring out how to solve the problem for somebody else. When you can solve the problem for somebody else using that passion, you have a business proposition.
Well, I think the mentors and potential mentors out there that are listening might be thinking something, and I know at one point I thought this before I interviewed enough people to learn how to do it right. They might be thinking something like, wait a second, you mean going to Starbucks and having coffee is not enough? I can't just share stories about my life. What if someone say you're going to change one thing now or start doing one thing now, depending on the level they're at, to be a better mentor, what one thing would you say to them?
I would tell them that the story you tell yourself about yourself matters, not the story that somebody else says about you, not what someone else believes, but the story you tell yourself about yourself versus the story that somebody else says about you, and then the true story. I think I would encourage them to give their own example of their story. If they want to have a coffee conversation and talk about this thing, stories are powerful, right? Stories lead to inspired action, which leads to fulfillment, right? Everything is about stories, but it's what story you're talking about. So even if they were just to take the story piece, I think that would be a game changer. If you're able to help that mentee understand the power of perspective, perception, and just through that conversation by itself, giving their own example of maybe how, I remember when I wanted to be a pro tennis player, nobody said I could do it. Nobody said I could get accepted to, UCLA's tennis team, which was number 1 in the nation, and I proved them wrong. But if I would listen to any of them, I wouldn't have been able to have that experience. So sharing examples, real life examples from the mentor's story, and then shifting the conversation to the mentee and asking, hey, what's your story? And you'd be surprised at what you'll learn from just them talking about that story of how they see themselves versus maybe their parents or somebody else or even their significant other. It's truly interesting. And I think it's eye-opening. And I have it in one of my frameworks in my book I published in May called The Interior Design of Your Career and Life, because it is inward and you are designing your life. And a lot of the concepts of interior design apply to the designing of your life. So in terms of what represents what in your life, story is one of them. Some stories may illuminate your path and give you the confidence, while other stories may be dark, may be broken, maybe that corner of the house that you don't spend a lot of time in. Another story might be waking up to birds and the sound of a water fountain. So you can actively and proactively design your life and create that story and write that story and change that story. So they're not just storytellers, right? They're story makers and they're story changers. And I think that is what we try to instill in every student, that they have the power to design a life they love.
That is an awesome way to close. Thank you for the time. And if people listening or watching want to find you online, where's the best place to go?
LinkedIn, I'd say, is the easiest way. Happy to connect with everybody. And thanks so much for the opportunity, Mark. Always a pleasure to see you. Congratulations on your book. Very excited for you. I'm always up for talking about how to bring big ideas to life. So reach out to me, hopefully sooner than later.
I definitely will. Thanks a lot, Hassan. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.